Without a doubt, the one method that catches more F1s than any other in the height of summer is shallow fishing. So today I've brought you and the Frenzee cameras along to one of the very best F1 venues in the country, Lindholme Lakes. And I'm going to pass on all of them little hints and little tips I've picked up over the years that'll put more F1s in your net. First up, rig choice. For me, rigs are the most important part of your F1 shallow armoury. They're going to allow you to hook more bites, become more efficient, and in turn put more fish in your net. But first up, before I talk through rigs, just a quick touch on fishery rules. Some of the things I'm going to show you with my rigs will be allowed at some fisheries, they might not be allowed at others. There is little ways to help you out and almost get around them rules slightly to allow everything to be as direct as possible, which is something I'm going to talk about a lot, and allow you to put more fish in your net while sticking to the fishery rules. Now here at Lindholme, for example, you've got to have, by open match rules, 8 inches of line above your float. You also can't overshot your float, and you must have a float on. Now alongside that, Lindholme actually have some different rules for pleasure fishing, like we are today, and for club match rules, where some of them rules are done away with. You can fish shorter lines to your float, you can not have a float on, you can overshot, you can do loads of different things. So I'm going to talk through them all today and let you know exactly how I go about using them types of rigs and why I use them. So first up, I want to talk about what I'd call my go-to shallow rig. It's the rig that I use most of the time and will pretty much always be the rig I start on. Now, there's a lot of talk about light float, slow falling rigs, and this one couldn't be any different to that. So first thing I want to talk about just quickly is the elastic. I use this same elastic for all of my F1 shallow fishing, whether the fish are a pound, the 3 pound, whether I've got a float on, I haven't got a float on, I'm overshotting, I'm fishing normally. The 10 to 12 FXT hybrid is my go-to. It means I can put it in lots and lots of top kits and set lots of rigs up without having to worry about using different elastics for everything and not quite having enough of them. So first up, and one of the most important aspects of the actual rig itself, is this bit, the length of line above the float. Now, the shorter I can get that line, the more bites I'm going to hit. It's all about, like I said, making the rig direct. So here I've got probably 2 to 3 inches. I'm fishing at 13 meters. I want to have control of my rig. I want to be able to watch what my float's doing. So I don't want to shorten it down too much more than that, because things become awkward. I start moving my float about. Now, like I said, rules will dictate this. Other places you might have to have more line. That's just something that you're going to have to put up with and help try and keep your line tight in other ways, but I'll go through that in a little bit. Now the next thing's the float. From depths from sort of 6 inches to probably 2 foot, I'll use this 0.2 of a gram dibber. Now 0.2 is quite heavy for what some people will want to do. It won't allow your bait to fall really slowly, but it's helped me keep that nice, direct, tight line and achieve the self-hooking rig that I'm looking for. So coming back down from the float, I get to my shot. Dead simple. I've got a bulk on it today, 3 number 9s. I'm fishing with pellets. If it was maggots or casters, this float actually takes 1 more number 9 with the lighter bait. And that keeps all of the line tight from my float down to my hook length. So all of this bit in the middle is kept tight, it's kept direct. Now alongside that, I make sure this float is as dotted down as I can possibly get it. So if I put my 3 number 9s on and I feel like it could take a little bit more, I'm happy to maybe put a number 11, a number 12 on there. I basically want it so it's only just above the surface. And what that does is cuts down on the resistance in the float. When my float goes under, there's then this bit of slack line above it to tighten up, and it'll pull on my elastic and hook itself. The less resistance in this bit, the easier that bit's going to tighten up and pull on the elastic. Below the shot, nice short hook length, up to 12 inches, that's 2 inches long, and after that I'll go for 3 inches long. So again, this bit can be a little bit slack underneath there, but hopefully the weight of my hook, the weight of my bait is going to keep this bit nice and tight. And then below there, hook choice, you want something nice and sharp, it's going to prick the fish, allow it to hook itself. I've got a size 18 505 and just a bait band hair rig that I can slip my pellet in. If I'm fishing with casters that I'm going to band, I'm going to use exactly the same. If I want to hook maggots on and I'm fishing with maggots, then I'll change that to a 404 in a spade end. So a nice simple rig, and it's basically designed to keep everything as tight as I can and keep the least amount of slack line in my rig, meaning that I'm going to hook more fish, get them to hook themselves, and then, like I said before, it's nice and direct and going to allow me to catch as many fish and be as efficient as I possibly can. Now, that rig isn't always going to be my choice. There's another rig that I like to use that does the same sort of thing. Again, nice and direct. The fish are going to hook themselves, but this rig is just slightly overshotted. Now, like I said, same elastic, it's that 10 to 12, and then moving down again, I've got a dibber, but you'll notice this one is actually in line, and that just allows me, again, to keep everything nice and tight, everything nice and direct. When I'm fishing with my float shotted above the water, I just feel like a dibber with a side eye fish is a little bit better, but when I want something really, really direct, this inline dibber is absolutely perfect. Exactly the same again, I'm coming down, you'll notice this one's got more line above it, but that becomes irrelevant because when this float's actually in the water, it's going to hit the water and it's going to nice and slowly sink down. This line's going to stay tight anyway as it's following the float through the water. Coming down from there again, a nice simple bulk of shot. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, I'm going to overshot this rig. You could look at that and think, why is there not a BB, a number one, a treble A, something nice and big? It's going to sink my float like a brick. That couldn't be more wrong in my opinion, and you'll see why when I'm fishing, but this float is only just overshotted, so I want it to go in with an extra number 9 shot on it, and the float will sink nice and slowly through the water, almost like a parachute, slowing my hook bait down, meaning I can lift and drop, jig the rig, and my hook bait's being taken down under the weight of my float and sinking nice and slowly, being slowed up, so I'm not having to try and lower it through the peg. I can literally pick my pole up, drop it back down, and that float will just carry on its journey through the water, making my hook bait sink nice and naturally. And then again, the same hooks and the band, the 505, a band for a pellet or a caster, or a 404 with the maggots hooked straight on. That rig again is going to allow a nice tight line. I'm going to hook more fish because of it, and the fish again are going to bolt against my elastic and hook themselves. Now, there is days when things need to become much more delicate. You need your hook bait to fall really slowly through the water, and you're going to miss a few more bites doing that, but you need to change the float pattern slightly to allow you to keep in contact with your rig all the way down, and again keep that tight line as best as we possibly can. So this time, same elastic again, and I've got a little bit more line above my float. With this rig, I'm going to be trying to flick my rig over, and I'm going to hold onto the float and almost pull it backwards really slowly, slightly drag it as it's settling, and that'll allow me to keep this bit nice and tight. And then below there, again looking at keeping my rig tight as it's falling through the water, I've got spread out shot, and that's just 3 number 11s. As I flick the rig over, my hook bait will land, and then I've got my 3 shots spread out, my float, and I'm going to be dragging back against that float, meaning I've got everything as it comes down on a tight line, and hopefully again the fish will hook themselves against the elastic. Now with this type of rig you'll miss a few more bites, which is why I like to start on the other 2, but there's often days this will be much better, and generally if it's really flat calm, it's red hot, the fish will come right up to the surface, drop back down, and they'll be feeding at all different layers, and that's when this rig can be deadly. But when I'm fishing for big weights, especially when I've got a little bit of wind on the peg, there's some ripple, the fish are feeding positively, I always try and get away with the other 2 rigs, which are going to be more efficient and catch me more fish. One thing that's vitally important to take a lot of notice of when it's coming to your shallow fishing session is the weather conditions, and it affects a lot of things that are happening. It affects where I'm going to fish, it affects what I'm going to fish, and it affects how the fish are going to react to things. So on certain days things will be totally different, and the things I'm looking at are things like weather, how bright it is, whether it's raining, whether it's windy, and they'll all affect what I'm planning on doing. So today, for example, we've had a little bit of everything, and it's noticeable how much of a difference it's made to the fishing as the weather's changed. So to start with, we had quite a lot of rain, and it actually came down torrentially at one point, and the fishing at that point was absolutely terrible. The fish dropped much deeper. Because we're looking at doing this video on shallow fishing, I never had any rigs set up to fish on the bottom, and that's definitely where I would have caught in that spell. I could have fished on the bottom, the peg was fizzing, and I would have caught loads of fish still. But trying to catch them shallow was really, really difficult. The weather then changed, the clouds passed over, the rain stopped, but it still wasn't overly bright, and there was still a good wind on the lake. Wind was blowing across me. The fish at that point fed really, really well. Started catching shallow, and fishing with an overshotted rig was by far the best. Now, when it comes to windy conditions, that's when you find the overshotted rig can really score. You can't keep other rigs as tight, you can't keep them as direct, and you'll find yourself missing bites. Where the overshotted rig is basically fishing itself. And it was really, really good with that rig, and now the weather's changed again. It's become flat calm, but because we're sat by ourselves, the fish are really, really feeding. I can keep catching exactly how I was in that wind. But generally, maybe in match conditions, more people on the bank, what tends to happen as it goes calm is the fish become a little bit more wary. They become a little bit harder to catch, and you often start having to tweak what you're doing. So you might need to fish a little bit further out. It's flat calm, the fish will feed better further out from the bank. You can go a little bit further. Obviously the weather lends itself to being able to control a long pole really well. And you can go and fish further out, and it'll just put a few more fish in the net. Likewise, if the wind gets up, the wind's strong, you don't want to be trying to fish too far out, but you still need to be able to feed your bait well. Still need to be able to fish well and present your hook bait, and if the wind's going to stop you doing that, come a little bit closer. Now, one more thing I just want to talk about, what comes sort of down to conditions. You can see there's a lot of wildlife in my peg today. There's ducks everywhere, and when it's as calm as it is at the minute, them ducks can actually be a godsend, and you can end up with loads and loads of fish sat underneath them. They feed confidently. That little bit of movement off the ducks breaks up the water, and you can see there, fire some pellets in, there's ducks all over, my elastic comes straight out, and they just break up the surface a little bit. And I also believe that the fish actually associate the feeding ducks with meaning things are safe, and it just makes them lose a little bit of caution. You can catch them a little bit easier. So one thing you see a lot of people doing is trying to scare these ducks off, when in reality you need to be trying to keep them happy. So you can see, not only am I feeding the fish while I've got this fish on, I'm feeding the ducks as well, and it's keeping them in my peg, keeping the fish happy underneath them. Another lovely big F1. Fishing is absolutely fantastic today, and I'm sure it's no coincidence that even though it's gone totally flat, I can't even get hold of that one, it's that big. Let's just try and unhook him a bit gently in the bottom of the net. Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that them ducks have come into the peg, it's gone flat calm, but the fishing is absolutely fantastic still, because the ducks are giving the fish confidence to feed underneath them. So the last thing you want to do is try and scare them ducks off. Keep them happy, keep them feeding in your peg, and you'll also keep the fish feeding in your peg. So just fire a few more pellets out again, them ducks will be all over, but it'll be no surprise if I just ship out. Don't go crazy shipping out, try not to scare the ducks too much. You'll drop your rig in, feed, and I'll probably find I get one really quickly again. So paying attention to the conditions and what's going on in your peg is absolutely vital to having a good day. And if you look at it from the point of view of, if it's calm, if it's flat, if it's bright, the fishing's a little bit harder, look for cover, look to go to the windward end of the lake, maybe try fishing with lighter rigs, a little bit more line above the float, and the fish should hopefully feed a bit more confident. If it's windy, you've got some overcast conditions, chances are the fish are going to feed a little bit better, and you can probably get away with them more direct rigs, fish more positive, catch them a little bit closer to yourself and just make everything a little bit easier. Now, while the fishing today has been absolutely unbelievable, I've got loads of space and it is solid with fish. I can catch them doing whatever I want. But there is obviously days when things are a lot more difficult. And what I want to do is just show you a couple of little tips and tricks that'll put a few more fish in your net. So the first one, I spoke when I was talking about rigs, about this rig with a longer line above your float. That's going to just allow you to get a few more bites when the fishing's harder, but missed bites become a problem. Now, I promised I'd show you a little trick to get around that, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. All it takes, a couple of number 9 barrel shot, number 8 barrel shot, something to add a little bit of weight to my rig. And I'm going to just slip them on, 3 of them above my float. So, let's put them back down. I'm going to nip the 3 of them on. Just 2 or 3 inches above my float. And now, that's almost going to give me the effect of my rig with that much shorter line. As you can see there, the float to the back shot is roughly the same as the float to my connector on my other rig. So when I go out and fish, and I'll demonstrate it now, I can actually lay my rig in or slap my rig in and hold tight against them back shots. And that's just going to allow me to keep hold of my float, keep everything a little bit tighter, and I'll hook a few more fish. But I've got all the advantages of having a longer line above my float and keeping it out of the way of the fish. Now, this might be a bit difficult, I need to try and not hook a duck, but slapped it over, you can probably see there, I'm just holding onto my back shots. You will still miss some because it's not the same as having a really short line or an overshotted float, but them fish look like they're much shallower with all the room I've got. But you can probably see on the camera just how it's holding my float and holding my line really nice and tight. And I'm getting a lot of liners, to be honest. I can see my float moving about, lots of ducks in my peg, but it's just something that allows you to catch a few more fish and hit a few more bites, and that was a perfect example. You just see, I flicked the rig over, as it hit the water, everything was nice and tight, I was holding onto them back shot, and the fish just pulled my elastic straight out. When the fishing's a little bit more difficult, and that long line above your float is getting you more bites, this definitely helps you hit more. Now, just one quick thing with that, do check the venue rules again, because like I said here at Lindholme, the open match rules are different to the general fishing rules, and you're actually not allowed to backshot your shallow rigs in an open match. So if that's the case at your venue, then just double check, but at a lot of venues, you can fish with a longer line above your float and you're allowed to backshot it. And in conditions like what we've got now, where it's totally flat calm, you hit so many more bites and get so many more bites fishing like that. Again, a lovely big F1. There's such a good stamp today. You can see how we can put together weights of fish really, really quickly. So, moving on from that, I think that just demonstrated what I was talking about with the back shots nicely. I won't try and catch another one. I'm going to show you another little trick. So, what I want to do is do a little bit of tapping. Now, we've seen how shallow them fish are. Really important now, you need that short line above your float for this. If I try this with the other rig, try tapping the water, I'm going to have loads and loads of slack line and I'm just not going to hook as many fish. Now, using things like tapping and slapping, which I'll talk about as well, at the right time is really important. And I'm not a big fan of slapping and tapping all the time. I think there's times when it'll scare out with your peg more fish than what you're going to catch. But it does catch some fish as well. And when you're in that little spell where maybe you're just waiting a little bit longer for a bite, it's well worth doing. So what I'm going to do is feed some bait before I go out this time, get some bait in my peg, and then I'm going to ship out. And the next thing I want to do is make a little bit of noise. Now this also lends itself perfectly to the overshotted rig. I'm going to put my rig in. You can see that I've got my short line, I'm holding onto the float, and just give the water a little rattle. Now I don't want to tap for too long, maybe 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. Then if I don't get one, which I'm just hoping to pull my elastic straight out, I'll lift the rig, lower it back into that tapping. Just give it a few seconds, no noise, lift my rig, drop it down, and give it another little tap. Another 5 seconds or so. And I'm actually, with how good the fishing is today, I'm surprised I haven't had one yet. But it could be that my rig's ended up actually below them. Or they're that hungry, they just want some baiting. Now we can't just keep tapping. So now we'll feed some bait over my float. Quite often when the fishing's good like it is today, the bait will hit the water and you'll get one straight away. Then I can do the same thing again, let the ducks get away from my pole a little bit. And again, give the water a little tap. Now, it doesn't always work. And like I said, it does really lend itself to an overshotted rig. You might have your rig 10 inches long. You can let it sink and give the water a tap. Now, you can also do this underneath cover. So if you're fishing to a tree or something like that, tapping can be absolutely deadly. Now, it doesn't seem like I've caught one. So the next thing I want to talk about is making a bit of noise, but slapping your, oh, look at that, I've got one. The next thing I was going to talk about is slapping your rig in. And again, you're doing a similar thing. You're trying to make some noise without feeding. But the difference between slapping and tapping is when the fish are coming really shallow, like what they are today, and they're right under the surface, by the time you're tapping your rig, your bait is often too deep. So, what I'm going to do when I come to slapping it, is exactly the same sort of process. I'm going to ship out, feed before I ship out, and then I'll slap my rig into it a couple of times. Now, how many times is really dependent on a couple of things, and again it comes back to conditions. I find when it's totally flat calm, like it was just before I shipped back, one slap's normally adequate. I can sort of feed a little bit of bait, I'm trying to get a fish in the area, and once it's there, one little plop of your pellet on the water seems to just draw an instant response quite often. Whereas once you've got a bit of ripple on, and you can get the ducks out of the way, 2 or 3 slaps is often better, so you're getting them to come up. So I've slapped it 3 times and then I'll let it go in, and that just shows the fish are so much shallower than when I was tapping. So when I was tapping, the fish are probably looking right under the surface for some bait. When I slapped my rig in 3 times. By that time, the fish has come right up to the surface, and when I let it fish on the 3rd slap, it has it before my rig's even settled. So just because there's loads and loads of fish there, it just shows one way can often be better than another still, and it's not vital, it is vital to make sure you're doing the right thing at the right time. If you look how long it took me to get a bite when I was tapping, and I didn't really catch one, it took a long time, and when I did catch it, it was a bit after my tap, to an instant bite that time. And when the fish are coming really shallow, I tend to find slapping is better. When the fish are sat a little bit deeper, then tapping is. But I always like to try and catch as many fish as I can without doing these type of things, because like I spoke about earlier, they can often scare fish out of your peg, and if you're constantly slapping, not really feeding any bait, the fish don't have that much of a reason to stay in your peg. So I've just fed again, we'll try the same thing again, ship out, wait for the ducks to part, slap, 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 and then let the rig fish. And again, instant. The difference between that and tapping is unbelievable, because my bait's going past them at the right time and at the right depth after I've made the noise. So just a few little tricks. I'm just going to put a few extra fish in your net, both at the harder times of the match, and also, like I've just shown there, when you really want to up your catch rate, it's just getting me a bite instantly instead of having to wait. So definitely try both, but quite often it's better not making any noise, lifting and dropping, and just keep feeding your bait. Catch the fish that are eating and don't scare too many out of your peg. Once it's solid like it is now, you can probably get away with doing it a lot more often. So we'll just have one more go again, go out, see if that works again. I've fed my bait when I've hooked one. I'm keeping the fish happy. I want to feed before I go out. Again, keep the fish happy, keep them there, keep them in the upper layers. That one went a bit too fast, so I'll just feed again. And then I'm just going to go out, slap, slap, let it fish on the third one. I've made my noise, the fish have come right up to the surface, and hopefully one grabs my pellet almost instantly then. 3 slaps. And no bite this time. So it just shows it doesn't always work. I'll try it again. 1, 2, 3. Now if I don't get one, then I'm going to try and feed some bait and see if the fish come straight into that. So it's vital to mix them up. Don't just keep slapping and slapping, because you need to feed to get them fish in the upper layers, get them round your hook bait. Maybe a little lift and a drop. I'll feed once more. Now I'm just going to give it sort of 10 seconds, see if I catch one, which I have. If I didn't get one after them 10 seconds or so, then I'll just try another little slap, 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 let my rig fish again. But especially earlier on in the session and when I'm building it up, I like to try and catch for as long as I can, as long as it's going well, without making too much noise, too much commotion. I like to try and catch them just with my feeding, and then later on in the session, or when I feel I need to really up things, I'll start making that little bit of noise by either tapping or slapping, depending which one is best on the day. Well, once again, Lindholme has definitely not let us down. Like I said at the start of the video, it's one of the very best F1 venues in the country, and today it's definitely proved that, with loads of big F1s, just like this beauty. Once we get him in the net, if he stops being angry, there we go, we'll hold him up and have a quick look at him. Slip the hook out of him. And we'll have a quick look. What a beautiful fish to finish the day on. So, loads and loads of fish caught today, and all for the price of a couple of bags of fishery pellets, which just goes to show you that fishing can be a cheap day out and you can catch loads and loads of fish without spending a fortune on bait. Now hopefully, with the way that the weather's changed today, the fishing's changed, the way the fish have fed have changed, you've picked up a few little hints and tips that are going to help you with all of your F1 shallow fishing. Now if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Loads more videos to come and loads more content. So hopefully I'll see you out on the bank soon.